The OC-5 is the latest octave pedal from Boss. In the 80s, Boss released the OC-2, which became a favourite amongst bass players for its ability to create synth-like bass tones whilst tracking the signal convincingly. Since it was discontinued in the early 2000s, it is still a very sought-after pedal. Its replacement, the OC-3, was digital rather than analog, and some players just preferred that analog sound. Personally, I've always preferred the OC-3 for its extra functionality, but some people just prefer the OC-2. So now Boss have released the OC-5, which they have now attempted to combine both the OC-2 and the OC-3. But have they succeeded? And what happened to the OC-4? So first of all, I'm going to talk you through the pedal, and then I'm going to give you my opinion. So on the back, you can choose either guitar or bass. Of course, we're going to go with bass. On the front, you have a vintage/poly switch. Essentially, this is where you choose the OC-2, the vintage, or the OC-3, poly. So the first knob is the volume of the direct signal, so you can just turn the original signal up or down. The second knob is actually a new feature for the OC series. The pedal reproduces the original signal an octave up, and this knob controls the volume of that. The next knob controls an octave down, and this sound on its own is the sought-after synth sound that most people seek out with the OC-2. The final knob has two functions. In vintage mode, it gives you 2 octaves down, just like the OC-2. You have to play quite high up on the bass to make this work. And then we have poly mode. So the first knob is the same, the second and third are the same, but have a slightly different sound. I believe the difference is supposed to be an analog sound in the vintage mode and a digital sound in the poly mode. So you're essentially getting 2 different sounding octave pedals in one pedal. In poly mode, the last knob changes its function. You can change the range of the instrument that the pedal works with. So you can have high notes sounding like a normal bass and the low notes with the octave effect. In poly mode, you are also able to play chords, which works sometimes, but I think maybe this feature is better suited for guitars, as it doesn't quite work all the time. Another feature is that, like the OC-3, you can split the signal coming out of the pedal into 2. So one signal is just the bass and one signal is the effects. This would work well if you're using 2 separate amps, kind of like Royal Blood. So what do I think? I'm just going to break it down into a few categories. So I love the sound of this pedal. I honestly can't tell the difference between the OC-2 and the OC-5 in vintage mode. If there is a difference, then you'd have to be really tuned in to that OC-2 sound to hear it. Or maybe it's the heritage of the OC-2 that makes you think you can hear it, but honestly for me, there is no difference. There are so many different combinations of sounds in this pedal that it means you can use it in a number of settings. For me, I'm mostly going to be using it on the 1 octave down mixed with the direct signal. I use that a lot on gigs. I'm still not 100% sure if I prefer the vintage mode or the poly mode best. I'll keep messing around with it until I come to a conclusion. Something I've discovered is you can actually go a lot lower than the OC-2 and 3. On the OC-3 I could get down to the A until the signal started breaking up, but with the OC-5 I can go all the way down to E. Although I'd probably never use it that low, but it's quite impressive. So what I usually find with pedals is they're usually either really fun or they're essential. And I think this is, for me, one of the times that one pedal does both. The poly feature isn't perfect. I think that'd probably work better on guitar, so it gets marked down slightly for that. So I think Boss or Roland have always been very reasonable with their pricing, and for £120 I don't think you'll get a better octave pedal than this. So I've had this pedal for a few weeks now and it's fine. I've had Boss pedals in the past, I've never had one break on me. They are known for being very tough. Look at this OC-3. It's been used a lot and it's still in perfect working order. They're like the SM58 of pedals. So Boss are not my favourite pedals to look at, if I'm totally honest. And although I couldn't imagine the OC series in any other colour, it doesn't get any points for being brown. But at the same time, it's not ugly, so will I put it on my board? Will I swap out my OC-3 for the OC-5? 100% yes. I can't wait to get gigging with this. It sounds incredible. It's got loads of features. And yeah, I guess I won't be needing this anymore. Just kidding. So I'm thinking of doing a comparison of an OC2, OC3 and an OC5. Let me know in the comments if you think that's a good idea. I'll now check out one of these videos.